I'm Tiffany. My topic is about Planned Parenthood specifically. How defunding Planned Parenthood would have a significant negative impact on women, and I will be talking about how it negatively affects women, significantly harms reproductive care, and negatively affects sexual education. So how defunding would work is that no federal money will be spent on abortions except in the cases of rape, incest, and if the mother's life were at risk. And this negatively affects women because they no longer have the choice to get an abortion. So this would also lead to unintended pregnancies. So the mother would have the child even if they're not mentally or financially stable or prepared. So Amelia Thompson DeVos states that about 40% of revenue for other services, such as contraception, STD testing, birth control, and cancer screenings, comes from the government, mostly through Medicaid reimbursements, and that's significant because Planned Parenthood provides these services for women of low income, and they are at risk for losing such preventative health care. Women of low income would also lose access to preventative care, such as birth control, in which some women use to regulate their menstrual cycle. This is important because the imbalance of hormones, such as estrogen, could lead to a disease such as osteoporosis, which results in brittle bones or the loss of bone mass. So we'd be more prone to like breaking bones and getting injured more frequently. My second claim is that how defunding would significantly harm reproductive care. So Planned Parenthood states that they provide birth control for nearly 2 million people, over 4.2 million STD tests and treatments, and 320,000 breast exams and 295,000 pap smears every year. So this is important because they're one of the few health programs that accept Medicaid. So that would lead to an increase of STDs and also possible an increased frequency of breast cancer happening. So women wouldn't be able to catch it in early stages and have treatment for it. Amelia also states in her article that community health centers would have to pick up the slack that Planned Parenthood could no longer provide. This could lead to an increase of misdiagnosis and wrong prescriptions being prescribed because they would have an influx of patients that they would have to see. So, because they're already obligated to see patients regularly, so that influx they would have to pick up the slack from Planned Parenthood. And finally, defunding would negatively affect sexual education. So an article published in Health Education stated that school-based sexuality education is inadequate and in some cases can be degrading, such as in cases of LGBTQ individuals. They lack sensitivity towards that topic. The Planned Parenthood also provides information, resources, and care to people across the gender and sexuality spectrum. As Josie Rhodes Cook states in her article, the pros and cons for the danger to women. So that same article that was published in Health Education states that Planned Parenthood also provides sex education for more than 1.5 million youths and adults. And they also offer courses that teaches sex educators how to talk about uncomfortable topics such as gay or lesbian sex. And in conclusion, I hope that convince you guys that defunding Planned Parenthood would have a significant negative impact on women.
All right, the proposition's identified pretty clearly. The contents are laid out, although you're rushing through it. You kind of assume that everybody's going to know that this is being threatened. I think you need a little bit of background information to show that this is in fact a problem. The first argument on which basically involves access to abortion is a little problematic, since it's not defunding that prevents Planned Parenthood from spending federal money on abortion, but it's been a long-standing practice, so that feels a little bit like it's out of left field. It's not particularly connected to this point. The second point, I think, is a little bit more germane, that there are reproductive issues that are concerned with this, and that this is going to be the primary place that people get assistance. I think you need a little bit more information on that. You do have a piece of data that suggests that 2 million people get their birth control through Planned Parenthood and STD services. You had some nice factual data about those issues, so I think that benefits your argument very well there. The suggestion that Planned Parenthood is one of the few resources that takes Medicaid, I think you need to offer some proof on that there are a lack of alternatives is an important part of your argument here, and I'm not sure that you've shown that the alternatives would not be able to supply the resources and the assistance that people in poverty are going to need, and that Planned Parenthood is their only option. I think you need to have a stronger argument on that. The criticism of school-based sex education is okay. The LGBT issues are kind of tangential. I would assume that that's really detached from the birth control issues, and instead it has to do with some other issue that's not, kind of an intangible at this particular point, but doesn't have the same practical ramifications as the things that you're talking about on your first 2 points. You have a tendency to read quite a bit, and I think that that's a little bit problematic. You need to be more confident with the information that you're presenting and more certain in the way you address it. All right, thank you.